Hello everyone, Tom with K Fetish. Today on the channel we're going to feature the topic artists that grew on us over time. I've chosen 5 for my video. I'm going to start it off here with number 1. And number 1 is Mr. Frank Zappa. And this is his album, Just Another Band from LA. This is the first Zappa record I was ever introduced to about 40 plus years ago. I was at my brother's house and he was spinning the track Billy the Mountain, which really sucked me into this album. I really found the track just absolutely humorous and engaging, with Flo and Eddie from the Turtles on vocals, and just the whole concept, the absurd concept of Billy the Mountain. Loved it so much that the next day I went out and searched it out, found it used at Moby Disc Records. And even though I loved the track so much, I never really delved further into Zappa's discography until years later. About 10 years went by, and for Christmas, my brother-in-law gave me this album, Weasels Ripped My Flesh, which I played a few times, but again, stuck back on the shelf for further listening down the road. And then a few years later, I picked up the first album, Freak Out. Same thing, listened to it about once or twice, but and stuck it back on the shelf. But the album that really turned it around for me, for Zappa, about 10 years ago, I picked up Hot Rats from 1969. And what I loved about this album is it was kind of like a jazz fusion record. It's really just more instrumentals, less, parody and all that kind of thing. And I love every track on this album. This has been one of my most played albums the past 10 years. Peaches and Regalia. What's that track on side 2? Little Umbrellas is really a favorite track of mine. The whole album is great. The playing, the whole aesthetic of the record. So this is the album that really kind of got me more into Zappa. And then I started searching out more of his catalog, and I ended up picking up Whirling in It for the Money after that. I love this record. Such a great parody of Sgt. Pepper. You got Hendrix here on the cover and all these other people with their faces blackened out. And I just love the editing on this record. It's really just a masterclass of editing and just such creativity, And so I've been really getting into Zappa over the past 10 years. And recently I picked up One Size Fits All from the 70s. I'm starting to get into this right now. I want to pick up Uncle Meat. I think that's going to be my next purchase. But if you have any other choices for me, put them in the comment section. I know the guy has a discography like 8 miles long. There's such a rabbit hole to go down to in the Zappa discography that it's hard to know what to purchase. And there's so much to listen to. But I'd like to get turned on to a little more Zappa, more from maybe the 70s. So let me know in the comment section. Another artist that grew on me over time is Leonard Cohen. So this is his first album. This is another case where I had this album for years sitting on the shelf. I think I bought it at a Rhino record sale back in the 80s. Played it once, didn't really do anything for me. Maybe I was preoccupied when I was playing it. But about a day or two after he passed in 2016, something just struck me. I was like, let me put on some Leonard Cohen. Let me listen to this. So I put on my headphones, put this album on, and first, being able to listen to it just without any interruptions, and just all the way through in its entirety, it blew me away. The songwriting, everything from Suzanne to the last song, One of Us Cannot Be Wrong. Probably my favorite Leonard Cohen track of all time. He really has a way with a subtle melody. It's unlike anybody else, really. Once you get hooked on a Leonard Cohen song, it will never disappear from your psyche. This whole album is just a masterpiece of songwriting. I remember maybe I was a little... when I first bought this album, thinking, who is this old guy on the cover, right? This came out in 1967. He looks so unhip. Maybe I was judging a record by its cover, which I shouldn't have done, So after hearing this, I had to go deeper into the catalog. So I ended up getting into Songs from a Room, which has, maybe not as good as the first album, but there's some choice tracks on here. Bird on the Wire. I love the track Lady Midnight, Tonight Will Be Fine, You Know Who I Am. And then, of course, I had to get the whole catalog. I ended up getting Songs of Love and Hate, which is one of my top 3 Cohen albums. Famous Blue Raincoat, Avalanche, Joan of Arc. So many amazing tracks on here. And then one of my favorite Leonard Cohen tracks or Leonard Cohen albums is from 1988, and the album is called I'm Your Man. Here he is chomping on a banana. Here he doesn't take himself seriously at all. This has, I think, some of his best lyrics. Really humorous. First We Take Manhattan, Ain't No Cure for Love, Everybody Knows, I'm Your Man, Take This Waltz, Jazz Police, I Can't Forget, Tower of Song. This is a masterpiece album. He's playing this little Casio keyboard. He's moving on from that kind of singer-songwriter style. Though I love his guitar playing on those early albums. I mean, nobody was doing that flamenco thing in folk rock back then. A lot of those singer-songwriters like James Taylor, he was doing his own thing with his own style of guitar playing. But here he's just playing a little Casio keyboard, a little electronic kind of vibe in the background. Just a great record. And then, you know, before he passed, he put out this album here, his last album, kind of like Black Star with David Bowie. This came out just right around the time of his death or after his death. You Want It Darker. And this, too, has been on the in the CD player quite a bit. Some just fabulous tracks on here. There's one track here I especially like. Hold on here. What is it? It is Leaving the Table. In true Leonard Cohen fashion, just those dark, humorous lyrics. Really good listen here. Really good, strong way to go out. The poor guy was just, you could tell he was struggling with the vocals, but they add a mystique to this record. There's just a mystique and a quality and a mystery to this album that I love. So yeah, I've become just a huge, huge Leonard Cohen fan since his death. And that's number 2. Number 3 is Black Sabbath. Now, when I was a child in the early 70s, I grew up with just a ton of singer-songwriter albums and singer-songwriters. I mean, anywhere from Jackson Browne, Jesse Colin Young, James Taylor, Joni Mitchell. I mean, that's all I heard growing up in the early 70s. I never heard any hard rock. You know, I had to get into that stuff later on my own. But something like Black Sabbath was just like, you know, I remember we'd have these huge block parties on the street, people blaring Black Sabbath, and it was so evil sounding to my ears at 7 or 8. I'm like, oh God, turn that off. You know, it's horrible. And then as I got older, you know, a lot of my friends in junior high would play Black Sabbath, and still it would just be like, ugh. You know, I remember that title track would always freak me out, Black Sabbath. It's like, please turn it off. But then several years ago, after my mom passed, I started just listening to a lot of Black Sabbath and purchasing Black Sabbath. And for some weird reason, it was very therapeutic after my mom passed listening to this stuff. It was very cathartic, heavy, and I don't know, it finally transcended a certain part of me where I really started digging the Sabbath stuff. And I really love the first 5 albums, Black Sabbath, Paranoid, Master of Reality, Volume 4, and Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. I like those 5 albums. I really couldn't get into anything past that, but for some reason, I don't know, it was very, listening to these Sabbath albums after my mom passed was very cathartic and therapeutic. And I love, I'm a very passionate fan about riffs. I love riffs, and Tony Iommi, what he does on an album like Master of Reality, the riffs upon riffs in one song. He starts off with a riff, then goes into another riff. You may call it a tangent, but it all works really well. Works really well. So thank you, Sabbath, for the therapy. It really helped me during a kind of a traumatized period in my life, and got me through some hard times. So, I mean, of all bands, right? Who ever thought Black Sabbath would help me out in the long run? And I really dig these first 4 or 5 albums. This is my favorite here, Master of Reality. I love After Forever, and I even like these ballads that they put on, like Solitude, really cool track. I like the way Tony Iommi throws in like these classical guitar, you know, mini instrumentals in between all this, like, you know, evil sounding stuff. I love the song, what is it? Planet Caravan off of Paranoid. So yeah, I'm all in on Sabbath. At least their first 4 or 5 albums are great. And again, thank you for the therapy, Black Sabbath. Another one is about 5 months ago, I have become a huge fan of Blur. And back in the 90s, when I first heard Blur, what I heard of Blur, I did not like at all. Girls and Boys, I thought that song was just horrible. Song number 2, I mean, those were just two choices for me that were like, no, I do not like this band, do not like this band. They never really made a dent here in America. I don't even think the album Park Life hit the top 200. I think the self-titled album hit gold, but they were never a huge band here. So when I was at Freak Beat Records in Studio City, California, they have 2 sales a year where everything is really discounted. They have this whole huge section of CDs that are $0.25 each. And I was just throwing all these quarter CDs into my basket. And I ended up just throwing this into the basket, you know, thinking, oh, I'll give it a shot. What's $0.25, right? So I put it on, of course, Girls and Boys, got through that track. And then every track after Girls and Boys, I absolutely loved. This album just sucked me in from first listen. I just could not believe first of all, I just couldn't believe the range of material on here, and just the craftsmanship of songwriting blew me away. I mean, I always looked at Damon Albarn as like this pretty boy, poster boy. You know, I couldn't take him seriously. I never realized he was like this brilliant songwriter, let alone the rest of the band, right? Graham Coxon now has become one of my absolute favorite guitarists. I mean, this is a guy that plays with nothing but taste. Every song has taste and creativity. He has so many different sounds and so many different styles. It's like he's in the pantheon of great guitarists in this vein, this tasteful playing, like a Dave Davies or a Mick Ronson, or like a James Honeyman Scott or a Johnny Marr. You know, guitarists they're not flashy. They just play with taste, and that's Graham Coxon, and I just love his guitar playing. On top of that, the rhythm section blows me away. Alex James, and I forgot who the drummer's name is, Dave Roundtree, I believe. They are an amazing rhythm track, a rhythm section, and they just pull every song to the limit. And I don't know, it blows me away that 30 years have gone by. I never realized how great this band was. No one I knew was into Blur. I never heard any songs from Blur other than those 2 songs, so it just never made me want to go out and explore their catalog. So after hearing this, I had to get everything by Blur. And this album now has become one of my absolute favorite albums of all time. Modern Life is Rubbish. This is their 2nd album. Talk about a perfect record. And Graham Coxon's guitar work on here is stellar. The songwriting, the harmonies. I love the way Graham Coxon and Damon Albarn sound together, the way their vocals sound together and they harmonize. And the thing about Blur is their songs are so, they're constructed in such an incredible way. Like, there's so much attention to detail. This album here is just a 5-star masterpiece from start to finish. This is like an alternative rock masterpiece, and this is like an alternative pop masterpiece. Every style, guitar style you can imagine is on here. Clover Over Dover, there's a little guitar line in the beginning of that track that Graham Coxon plays. Almost brings a tear to my eye. It is so beautiful and hits you to the core. And then songs like This Is a Low, he finally pulls out a guitar solo in that. Graham Coxon is just, incredible. Bad Head, I can just go on and on about these albums. And then, of course, these albums, too, are fantastic. I would give Park Live a 5-star review. I would give Modern Life is Rubbish a 5-star review. The Great Escape is nearly as good. Maybe they could have edited down a couple of tracks. This is a fantastic record as well. And then, of course, the self-titled album here from '97. I think they were going into a really good territory here, a little darker, a little more indie rock, Pavement-style stuff. But the songs are infectious, incredible. I've listened to their other albums. 13, I love those three hit singles on that, but the rest of the album is a little too electronica for me. First album, Leisure, is a little too shoegazy for me, but I tell you, these 4 albums here, these 2 and these 2, have been on my playlist for 5 months straight. I wake up in the morning and I've got like 5 or 6 Blur songs going through my head. I like Blur so much that I even, on record store day, went out and bought this Zoetrope version of Park Life. Check this out. I don't usually do this. I go all out with this kind of stuff, but look at that. What a cool vinyl, right? So anyway, I've become a huge Blur fan on the account of buying a 25-cent Park Life CD. And to me, they're just up there with some of the greatest British guitar pop bands of all time. And then last but not least, another artist that has grown on me and to the point where I'm listening to her quite a bit all the time, and that is Suzanne Vega. Love Suzanne Vega. I think she has just an amazing vocal, those breathy vocals. No one really sounds like her and no one really writes like her. And she just doesn't get the recognition she deserves. I know she had a couple of hits with Luca and Tom's Diner, but she has just a ton of great albums and great songs. The first time I ever heard her was on the Smithereens album, the first Smithereens album, where she was on a track called In a Lonely Place. And then after that, I searched out her, over time, searched out her catalog, her first album, great tracks like Marlene on the Wall. This is her first album. Solitude Standing from '87 has just an array of great tracks. I love the title track especially, Solitude Standing. And then I love when she went into her kind of a more experimental phase with 99.9 Fahrenheit degrees. Love this album. Just full of just, you know, forward-thinking music here. And then another great album here. What is this one called? This is called 9 Objects of Desire. But if you want a good representation of her catalog, this is a great compilation, retrospective, the best of Suzanne Vega. Has all her best cuts on. And I find myself a lot over the years getting more and more into Suzanne Vega. I think she just really stands apart from a lot of her contemporaries back in the 80s who are doing this similar style of music. So yeah, those are 5 artists for me that have grown on me over time that I dig a lot now. What are 5 of your favorites? Throw those. What are 5 of artists that have grown on you over the years that you didn't really like at first? Let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.